Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this podcast. This podcast series we call Race, Culture, in the Church. Race, Culture, in the Church. And as I like to introduce every time we have the podcast, we live in the community we live. Culture is an issue. Everybody has culture. Hopefully everybody has culture. Culture is a part of our community. Race is a huge part of the conversation. And we don't apologize. We lean into our relationship with Jesus Christ. So race, culture, and the church, that intersection is where we are attempting to engage. And I encourage each of you to go back. This is the 21st, I believe. I think I counted correctly. This is the 21st podcast. The first started 1 week after the murder of George Floyd. And we've had different guests come and speak in this space. And I am pleased. I am absolutely pleased finally to have our council member, Jay Cheniere, District 5. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's been long overdue. I remember how we first met. You mistook me for my brother, and I believe that was over 5 years ago. I believe.
I think longer than that, actually.
It was. Yeah. We weren't here in Oak Park at the time, and but we still had a good lunch at the Tower Cafe.
We did.
But thank you. I want to read this since this is your first time in our space. I like to joke, but I'm not joking. It's not exhaustive research, but it is research nonetheless. And I was able to scrape some information off the internet city website on Jay Cheniere. You were elected in 2010 to the city council, re-elected 2 more times, 2014 and 2018. And you chair the Law and Legislation Committee. You were elected pro tem in 2013, vice mayor in 2014. You have, boy, oh boy, your outside consulting group, your past with the state of California, working with the legislature. You were assistant secretary for education, for development and planning in the governor's office, deputy director of the foundation, Consortium for California's Children and Youth, general manager of the California Food Bank, and it goes on and on and on. Undergrad in poli-sci from UC San Diego. Is that the Aztecs? No, that's... Tritons. Okay. UC San Diego, magna cum laude. Master's from LBJ, School of Public Affairs. University of Texas, Austin. Husband, father, avid cyclist.
I've been around.
You've been...
it just means I'm old, I think.
No, well, a lot of folks age and they don't have the resume that you have. Honestly, as I was reading that and just trying to digest it, it just seems like public service, everything just bespeaks of public service. Public service, either you were born for that or you grew into that. Help me understand, Jay.
Sure. I would say I was born into it. Both my parents were very community-oriented, took care of themselves, but did everything they could to take care of their friends as well. The values that I have, I think, are my Jewish values. Tikkun Olam, which means basically heal the world, is something that we live by. I've been very fortunate. My parents came with nothing. My dad escaped the Holocaust and by way of England and Bolivia and then Los Angeles.
Wow. Which part of Europe?
He was in Austria.
Austria.
With his parents. Unfortunately, he and his parents got out. His mother was one of 13 children. She was the only one that made it, and then 2 nephews of hers. But I consider myself very fortunate. My parents were not well off, but did fine. They worked hard, and I learned those lessons. And so giving back, I think, is just something that we practice. That, again, is part of Tikkun Olam. It's part of the Jewish values that I have. And I think it's really what fulfills me.
You say heal the world. That's the literal translation.
Right.
And you mentioned community. It's like you're looking at my notes here. So unpack that.
I did learn to read upside down at one point. So
unpack that for me. What is community? More than the dictionary definition. What is community? And describe what is healing the world, healing the community, healing Oak Park, healing. Yeah.
For me, I think the simple way to think about it would be, am I leaving it better off than it was? So the things that I do, the way that I work, particularly on the city council, I try not to be flashy. I don't live my life on Facebook, but I try to do the work. And for me, and why I ran, is that there was no voice for youth on the council 10, 12 years ago. And we just don't do well for our children in Sacramento. There's so much need. There's so much gap in the skills and competencies that our young people have. We talk about sustainability and we talk about green buildings, but we don't talk about human sustainability and building the human infrastructure for us to be successful. And I thought that was a place that I could make a difference. And so really that's where I've been working. And the community, we all live in different types of communities. I'm always amazed, to be honest with you. I could start off the day at a breakfast with someone who owns a shopping center. I can move from there to visiting our homeless shelter to see how it's going. And those differences as I work through the day are just so stark in the different worlds that we live in. For me, it's about making it better. I can
agree that it'd be jarring. Do you feel comfortable navigating that space, having linen tablecloth in the morning and, sitting, having a dirt floor in the afternoon?
Yeah. I think I don't know that there's a comfort level. There's somewhat of an awkwardness with the linen tablecloths, understanding how little some people have and how lucky I am. But I am lucky and I'm able to provide for my own children, and they've had a good life and will continue to. So for me, it's how do I bring everyone else along, and what can I do to make a difference in their lives?
You've mentioned that word more than twice now, luck. And when I think luck is, if I were inclined, which I'm not, I'd go to Thunder Valley and put in a quarter and pull an arm. And
we can go Friday night if you want.
That's lucky. That's lucky. I would argue that what you've described and how you've, I don't even want to use the word evolved, but how you've ended up this path that you've walked. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would call it luck.
Well, maybe it's persistence, and it's. I feel that I was lucky to be born into the family that I was, that had the values that they have or had, that they were able to provide for me. I don't, again, we weren't wealthy or anything like that, but I never wanted for anything. And I learned work ethic from my parents, particularly my father. And so we could call it whatever you want, but it's a thing that I've done now for at least 20 years in elected office, and hopefully we'll continue to do for the next 10 months and then find another calling within that realm afterwards.
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself,
okay.
But boy, why stop? Jeez, why stop now?
Yeah, that's a good question, but there's a number of things. One is I've been doing this, it will be 20 years, between 8 years on the school board and 12 years on the city council, and it's 20 years of nights and weekends. I'm a little tired. I also have a job, as you mentioned. I have a consulting business, so 20 years of two jobs, really. And I think just bringing someone else in who has new eyes, new sets of energy is important to do on an ongoing basis. It doesn't mean that I won't be around, to help. I can do as a volunteer quite a bit, and will continue to do that. But I just think it's time. We shouldn't overstay our welcome.
Boy, oh boy, you're setting me up, Jay. Overstaying our welcome. If we only knew when that expiration date, how did someone say after 3 days, fish and family are too much? It's just like, okay, it's time for you to go on.
Yeah.
At what point do we transition?
Yeah, for me, it was when I got my Medicare card. I guess I do want to enjoy things. My children are hopefully soon going to provide some grandchildren for me, and that's going to be something that I'm really looking forward to. I've done this for almost 12 years now. I've done a lot. As you were looking at my resume, I've done a lot of things. I've always been able to move laterally or up in switching jobs and learning a new set of skills as I went. What gets me going most of all is what I don't know and learning new skills. But again, I just think it's time for someone else to take this and bring a set of energy and ideas to the front here.
We were talking earlier about things. It seems like we play with life. The kids' game of whack-a-mole. The issue pops up. You take the little mallet and you try and pop the little mole down. Homelessness, gentrification, crime, education, health, COVID. Boy, is now. I mean, you've made the decision. But it is a pivot now with a whole lot of big issues on the table in this space we call community that have to be addressed.
Sure, but there's lots of ways to address them, and there's lots of ways to make a difference. I mean, look at yourself. You're not an elected, but you certainly have influence in this community in Oak Park. There are lots of ways to do that, and so I want to look for a new way. I just want to take a little bit of time off and think that through. Again, and personally, I had a time where my father just worked incredibly hard, finally retired, doing well, and he and my mom were going to travel and do all those things they'd been waiting for, and then he got sick. And I just, that's in my mind a lot. I want to be able to enjoy those years, and so I don't want to have to be somewhere at a certain time, but I want to continue to make a difference, and that can come in a lot of forms.
Do you, in the 20 plus years of obvious public service, the issues, I just ticked off a few. I mean, you can triple that.
Sure.
What have been the greatest challenge looking back? And obviously I'm going to ask you now going forward, what do you see as the greatest challenges on the near and longer term horizon?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think looking back, one of the let me start with my school board experience. There I was incredibly lucky. That was when our former mayor, Joe Cerna, got involved. They elected a slate of candidates. For 2 years, we had a 6-1 board, and then the following 2 years, we had a 7-0 board. We had 7 people who were committed to young people. No one was running for any other office. There was no politics in that way. It was all about kids and what do we need to do. That set the bar really high for me as I've gone through other school board designs or numbers of folks. As I've been on the council, you may remember when I started on the council, Kevin Johnson was mayor. We had a horrible redistricting experience. And so not having everyone on board for the right reasons, I think, or not there to do good regardless of what was happening outside of that, I think that's been a really large challenge and can be very frustrating. And we're kind of back at that, I think, as a city council right now. And I do have concerns going forward. You asked that about the council. We're going to have 3 individuals who will have had 2 years experience and 3 new individuals coming onto the council, plus a couple of experienced people. So how they deal with that, how they figure out how to work together and where they're going is going to be a pretty interesting thing.
Do you, I appreciate, and on a personal level, love your how you've unpacked community and presented that and lived it. do you, and no individuals, but as a collective, do you think and I'm going somewhere, I think, with this, do you think that the elected officials now, as a body, are we looking at community writ large? Are we looking at, well, my community is my district and my issues, and that's it, and that's all I'm looking at?
I think there's too much of only looking at my district versus looking at the city. Most of the work I've done, particularly around youth, has been citywide and looking at citywide issues. It's a difficult thing because you want to be obviously reelected. You want to make your constituents happy. So I would hope, and I know, and I've had it both ways, where when I was on the school board, we didn't have districts. So everyone was looking at the whole district. We didn't have individual districts. They do now. The city is obviously cut up into 8 districts. There's a lot of, well, if you're going to do that, I want the same thing in my district, even though equal is not equitable.
Correct.
And that's where we go.
Yeah, I'll probably say that. You've already promised that you will come back for
Yes.
So again, help me out. What do you see as the greatest challenge for 2022, and then say 2023 for the city of Sacramento?
It's homelessness. I mean, first, second, and third. We spend more time on that. It's probably the most frustrating issue that I've dealt with in my 20 years of public service, and nearly 20 years of public service.
Education wouldn't even make third place.
You know, I don't think as long as the homeless situation is what it is, it's really hard to get to the other things. It affects everything we do. It affects our economy. It affects people's jobs. It affects how we work together and the divisiveness that's come out over how we deal with that issue. So, you know, education is always up there. Maybe a little frustrating for me because I'm seeing the same things we saw 10, 12, 14 years ago, the same challenges. But we have to learn how to get along, and we have to take care of each other. That's, I'm sure, what you teach and preach, but we don't do that.
You mentioned,
we don't do that.
I guess I will not take issue. I never take issue with a former vice mayor.
That's all right.
But you said, you know, part of your job is to make your constituents happy. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I would say that as a pastor of City Church of Sacramento. That's not my job, is to make you happy. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel per se, but I've shared with you previously, pretty much every congregant, every member of your district, at some point or another, they know they can do your job better than you can do. Mm-hmm. Why did they make that decision? Why did they do that? Well,
let me just say, I think it's worse on the school board because everybody went to school, and so everybody's been in that position, so everyone knows better. You know, patience and thick skin are 2 of the requirements of being an elected official these days.
So the objective.
But
the objective is the objective. Let me give you a lollipop. Let me give you a bowl of ice cream. Let me give you, a package of Jell-O. And as I was sharing in a previous podcast, if we're not careful, we can supplant things that are truly community with transactional pacification.
I understand. So the goal here is to create systems that work for everyone, right? We don't have that in a lot. We have institutional racism in a lot of our systems. We have systems that are just completely broken. Our systems around homelessness are just being built in a way, our relationship with the county, all of that. Those are all long-term issues that we have to deal with, and that hopefully we're smart enough to figure out, but take time, because a lot of that is also changing culture, right? It's not just saying, well, this is the process we're going to use. It's getting people to buy in and believe that it will work better. Sometimes along the way, you need to hand out the lollipops or the ice cream to keep people in the fold and working with you.
we didn't get here, wherever here is, overnight.
Nope.
I love PBS. I love KVIE. I'm a member. And my parents came here in '67 from Bakersfield. As I understood then, and even now, more so, to places that you could live. Oak Park, Del Paso Heights. And someone said, well, Glen Elder. I said, well, I kind of throw that in Oak Park.
Don't tell that to people.
I understand, and don't tell that to folks that live in Glen Elder either. But I say that we have, as you said, I think you said, systemic issues that are generational. Dare I say, some go back 400 years. But our expectation is, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstrap or take down that tent and, give me my bowl of ice cream. The issues, at some point, I would hope, I'm not trying to make you happy. I'm trying to make you whole. I'm trying to make the community whole. And hopefully you will hang in there with me as we progress through this, that we'll get better together. But this idea that, again, we're playing communal, institutional whack-a-mole. It's okay. If history doesn't repeat, it echoes, and we're gonna be dealing with the same thing again, and then we'll get frustrated.
Good question. These are really difficult things and take time and take collaboration with individuals who may not have the problems as well, right? So for me to be successful at something, I'll give you an example. When I got on the board at Regional Transit was in a death spiral. They had no reserves. They were just not doing well at all. I came in, we had a changeover in the general manager. But what I did was went out and got a number of members of the business community who were well off, who were stars in their own right in what they were doing, and probably never took public transit. So really didn't have a real
sensitivity or understanding.
Either way, right. But because of the relationships I had built with them over time and however I had managed that, they were all willing to sit down and help. And Regional Transit has now won national awards for what it's doing. We have free rides for all kids, which is one of the best things that I think I've ever done. It's It's systemic in a way, but it's a program. I was looking at data today, and off the charts of young people using public transit post-pandemic particularly versus the adults. So I think it's always a balancing act of how do you do it short term? What do you need to do to get through the day to help folks to establish those relationships across the board, but at the same time thinking long term and systemically of how do you make those changes? And you have to do both. I'm not sure if that totally answers your question, but
your answer makes me want to say again, so Jay, why are you not running again? But I hear.
I appreciate that.
I hear you.
You'd have to talk to my wife.
No, and Bina would probably give me a knuckle sandwich. Yes. I appreciate. There's only so much gas in the tank.
Right.
My hope, my desire is that we are passing on the DNA, the communal DNA necessary to get there.
I think so.
Go ahead.
No, and I was thinking about today. I mean, it's another example. Getting the market open in what would otherwise be a food desert is so important for the community. It's not necessarily a long-term solution to food insecurity, right? That's about jobs. That's about a lot of other things. So again, I would look at that as a short-term. It's obviously a huge positive for the neighborhood.
Sure.
But it's not changing the system. We have to, at the same time, change the system. So maybe that's another example.
So it kind of begs the question then, at least begs me asking the question, what are the things sounds like regional transit, the free rides is one, but what are the things that, if you're looking back at the arc of your public service, that you're most proud of? It's like,
I've just started to think about that. Somebody wants to write an article before I go. And
well, I won't steal the article, but give me three or four things that you were like, I was in this role for this period of time, and doggone it, I am proud of these 3 or 4 things.
I think even though a lot of it has disappeared, the work we did on the school district and on the school board was incredibly important. We were a year ahead of the nation on accountability. We built a system of schools with a portfolio of schools to try to meet the needs of all young people who had different needs. So that to me was a very, very major thing, and for some period of time changed the culture at Sac City Unified. I mean, when I got there, our employees wouldn't wear a pin that said Sac City because they were embarrassed of where they worked. The relationships were so bad. Unfortunately, it's pretty much there again, but I think the portfolio of schools was one of the best things we do, and actually building it, the physical infrastructure we built in the district, moving from being on Capitol Mall to being in the neighborhoods on 47th was, I think, a huge thing. So I would say that in the council, I mean, there have been a lot of things. There have been projects, and then there have been some larger things. We actually have a timeline going back 10 years of the different work that we've done around youth. And again, that's one of the reasons I ran. And thinking about it, you know, we started off, again, thinking about structure. So creating a division within the Department of Parks by creating the Department of Youth Parks and Community Enrichment. So trying to look at the folks that we had who are responsible for our young people, thinking about the training that we would need to do, the culture that we were trying to change, so people would think about youth development and look at young people as assets and not debits that they would cross the street to avoid. And then thinking about the programmatic and adding dollars, and we've added significant dollars as we've gone over the last 3 or 4 years. So I think really what I'm most proud of, and I've worked with a lot of different things, but is changing how we think about young people. My best days are, we have a program called Summer at City Hall. We take 100 young people every year. They work, do internships at City Hall and learn about local government. My best day is when they present their projects to the City Council sometime in August after they're done.
That's a paid internship, isn't it?
They get paid for doing it. We do something similar at SACOG. It's called the Youth Leadership Academy. It was incredible to me that as a member of SACOG, Sacramento Area Council of Governments, the preeminent planning agency for housing and transportation in the region, and they had no way of listening to young people who we were doing the planning for, right? And you should always involve those who are most impacted by whatever decisions you're making, but youth were off the table. So we've created this, and you know, these are small moments, but I had a number of board members, I was chair of SACOG, I had a number of board members who were saying, oh, we shouldn't do this, kids can't handle it, they won't make any difference, who are now our most rabid and successful folks. So, you know, I think the kids piece is important, and then I've just had my hand in a lot of projects, a lot of things as we've gone forward, mostly quietly, but which is fine. It's, I think, the best way to get something done, and I got to start making a list.
So I've got a grade in mind, but if Jay Cheniere were grading Jay Cheniere for his service over the last 20 years, what grade would you give yourself?
Do I have citizenship as well, or just you know,
That's good. That's real good.
I would probably give myself a B, maybe a B plus. I think I've done a lot of good work. I think there are things I would do differently there where I could have done better. And I think an A would have been very difficult to me because I was working along the way as well. So I can never put 100% into either my job or my elected office.
I was going to give you A- because there's always room for improvement.
I appreciate that. I'll take that.
I've run out of time already, but you've promised you will come back.
Absolutely.
I so value our time. I want to. I really want to dive deeper into your spiritual formation that has had to, as you were talking about, make the world better. It has to have been your guiding star to make you attend or compel you to attend those meetings, to take those calls, to take the hits, if you will, from folks that vehemently disagreed with whatever direction. There had to be something more than just Jay Cheniere getting a check or something.
I don't think for me it was ever a choice. It was just, this is what you do. It's what I learned. It's how I grew up. It's what I watched my parents do. So
we will have to talk about just that. This is what you do. This is what you, because that is a maybe more of our parents' generation, maybe not even a baby boomer thing. So that is transcendent to have that perspective. This is what you do, and you don't think anything of it. I'm called to do this. This is what you do, as opposed to.
Why do you do what you do?
I'm on this side of the microphone. It's like, you stay on your side of the microphone. Okay, so I have two last questions, very important questions, just absolutely the most important questions that we've had all day. First is, what was the last song you listened to that you enjoyed listening to?
Actually, I was listening to Doobie Brothers the other day.
Man after my own heart. Taking it to the streets? Okay. Crank it
because
up.
I hadn't heard it.
Crank it up and play it.
It was just uplifting.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah, it just takes you out of your space. And the other most important question is, what have you read recently, or what is it maybe you're reading now?
Yeah. So reading is something that has fallen off the table in recent years.
It's funny how folks that come in here say the same thing. I don't have time to read.
my problem is I literally have thousands of pages to read for council, for our regional transit, for the Crocker board, for all the boards and commissions that I'm on. So I struggle to do it. It's something I'm very, very much looking forward to.
So what's the book you want to read that you haven't read?
Well, there's a number of books on race, and I'm kind of making my way through them that I think are important. I'm part of our DEI ad hoc. It's actually not an ad hoc, but our working group. The mayor, Mai Vang, myself, and Eric Gira do the same thing for SACOG. I'm on their REI group, so I think there's a lot of reading I need to do there. I've been kind of making it through Obama's autobiography, the first one. It's just slow for me. I just don't, it is a matter of time on that, but that will change.
I'm in the same boat, so I feel your pain. Yeah. Not that it makes any difference, but I feel your pain. Councilmember Jay Cheniere, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation this afternoon, and look forward to our next conversation, which you've promised to be a part.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work you do and for this community and this neighborhood.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Jay. And I want to continue to invite you to be a part of this conversation. Again, go to our podcast website and email us, send us your questions, send us your suggestions. Thank you so much for your time.